Hello, I'm Craig Mailer, the Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer for Cox Automotive UK. I've been with the business for 15 years and previously worked for General Motors on the leasing side. We're a business you may not have heard of us because we're largely a B2B brand, but in the UK we have a turnover of over 200 million. Our businesses include the world's largest vehicle auction company, Mannheim, which offers physical car auctions for fleets, manufacturers and dealers. And it also provides customers with supporting vehicle services, including logistics and vehicle preparation. We have an online trade-only car auction facility through Dealer Auction. We offer wholesale funding for dealers through a business called NextGear. And we also operate a number of consumer car buying solutions. And finally, we have an area called digital marketing and digital retail businesses, where we work with manufacturers and franchise dealers. Cox Automotive itself is part of a very large company in the US called Cox Enterprises. We're headquartered in Atlanta, and part of that business also includes Cox Communications and Cox Media, and as such we're a $21 billion revenue business. We've got approximately 55,000 employees around the world, of which over 24,000 work in Cox Automotive. The business was established in 1898, and the Cox family still own the business today. In fact, it's now in its fourth generation. The family is passionate about growing the business for future generations, which means they're continuously investing in innovation and expansion. Our entry into automotive started in the 1960s in the US when the Cox family bought a car auction in a small town in Pennsylvania called Mannheim. The first auction just featured just 3 cars. However, today that same auction handles over 12,000 cars a week. In fact, it's the biggest auction in the world. Cox Automotive is important because it's the only international division within Cox Enterprises, and we have a revenue of over $9 billion. Mannheim Auctions is our core brand, and today we've got physical car auctions across the US, Canada, Australia, the UK and Europe. And from an international perspective, our headquarters is here in Leeds. Cox Automotive first entered the UK with its Mannheim brand in the late 1990s. That was through an acquisition and a partnership with a UK company. And what that partnership did is establish 2 physical car auctions at first and ultimately grow to a network of 16 car auctions in the UK through acquisition. One of the acquisitions done by Mannheim was of a car auction company based in Leeds, and put simply, that was their headquarters, and so this became the central headquarters for Mannheim in the UK. Our role within our Mannheim business is that we're an intermediary. We don't own any of the vehicles that we sell, and essentially we manage a 2-sided market. The vendors who are selling the vehicles and the buyers who are mainly car dealers and traders. Ultimately, these vehicles are then sold on to the general public. The type of vehicles that come through our auctions include those that have ended their lease contracts, finance repossessions, and part exchanges from dealers that they don't wish to retain, as well as vehicles direct from manufacturers. In a physical car auction, all the action takes place in a large auction hall where the vehicles will be driven through and then sold by an auctioneer who will be taking bids from the live audience in the hall. The buyers can view the car beforehand, walk around it, listen to the engine, look at the inspection reports and check for any obvious faults. We also provide some additional insurance products as well. The physical experience maximises the buyer confidence to make a purchase. A major step in our market evolution towards online was the introduction of simulcast in 2004. This was a classic bricks and clicks model move. This allowed our trade buyers the chance to join the auction remotely via simulcast over the internet, whereby they would bid against the live buying audience in the hall, as well as the people also online. A major step in our market evolution towards online was the introduction of simulcast in 2004. To have a live online to physical auction was hugely innovative in such a traditional industry. Simulcast is now ingrained into our physical auction process, and penetration has grown from less than 1% of sales in 2004 to over a quarter of our sales today. However, if we include all our online channels, over 45% of our sales are digital. And from 2020 onwards, we expect that shift to accelerate even more, such that the majority of our sales will be online. And when we talk about online, we are talking about things like eBay-style timed auctions with no live auctioneer. We're talking about online auctions where the auctioneer is live, but the cars are not present. And also traditional things such as the buy now option, where the buyer can actually pay for the vehicle and buy the vehicle immediately. These auctions support the physical auction sales, as the cars are still stored at our auction and will go through the physical auction if not sold online, and vice versa. So as we look in our market about how we embrace the shift to digital, so buying a second-hand car is the biggest market for used goods outside of buying a house. As the world continues to move to online buying and mobile shopping, we had to consider how our strategy could evolve to support this. This is truly a global trend, and products and services such as Simulcast for us are global products. In essence, Simulcast has been a bridge supporting the move to digital auctions and making the transition easy for buyers and sellers. In 2012, we purchased a purely online auction company in Dealer Auction. They sell cars from franchise dealers to independent dealers via an online platform only, with no auctioneer. This model offers a very different pricing proposition and service proposition to physical auctions. Dealer Auction essentially allows the vendors to take their own images and upload the vehicle to the platform, along with description and reserved prices. Helping our customers make the transition to online can be a really complex process. There are a number of concerns about the buying process and the technology that's used, but also the assurance compared to an online purchase versus a physical purchase. It's important that customers trust us to provide them with all the information they need to make an informed purchase decision. In 2019, we created a joint venture with Auto Trader UK, which is the UK's largest consumer online marketplace, to ultimately create the largest UK wholesale online marketplace. We've got a joint vision in terms of the way the market is evolving in the shift to online, and what we've done is put our complementary capabilities together to create a really compelling proposition to our customers. We're launching a new platform in early 2020, which will allow automotive buyers access to stock from franchise dealers, fleet companies and manufacturers, which combines a number of our existing businesses, including the current Dealer Auction, along with a number of Auto Trader wholesale products. This will also make it easy for our customers to subsequently move vehicles through our MoveX business or fund vehicles through our wholesale funding arm. This is part of that digitisation of the process and not just about putting the digital transaction online. We offer similar digital models in other markets, including Move It in Canada and Mannheim Express in the USA. With the shift to online, we're also combining the very best of our physical capabilities into what we've called a phygital strategy. In essence, this is recognising as the transaction moves online, there are still vital services that need to be done to vehicles to enable that transaction to take place. So what we're doing is we're redefining our business value proposition, and some of the capabilities that we originally only offered through the physical auction, we're now seeking to extend to customers who may not be doing the transaction via our own auctions. Wholesale online marketplaces can be just as complex as consumer online marketplaces. In our business, in many ways, it's more complicated than the physical auction. If the system goes down, put simply, we can't sell cars. Our physical business is supported by our strong relationships with vendors and buyers. We don't own the cars, so it's of paramount importance that we maintain strong customer relationships. If we have no cars, we'll have no buyers. So some of the digital challenges can be the technology, but also how do you maintain a personal relationship with customers in a purely online environment? Building that trust online is absolutely critical, and making sure you have the products and services to provide assurance for customers. And put simply, when you're in a transition arrangement between physical and online, how do you help your customers through that transition process? But whether the vehicle is sold online or through a physical auction lane, there are some similar challenges in terms of the physical side of things, in terms of moving the metal, storing it, refurbishing it, repairing it, and actually processing these volumes at speed and cost effectively. We address these issues through investing in continuously upgrading our digital technology, but also the support services to enable the physical processes to take place as quickly and efficiently as possible. We can help customers with training materials, concierge services, and ongoing and immediate support if required, because often these same customers are buying physically as well as digitally. We want to make sure that they're fully informed to make a purchase decision. Our vendors also transacting online through us, so in terms of the way they communicate with us, in terms of the reserve prices they set, the whole world is increasingly moving to a digital exchange process. When considering what markets to enter, we need a full understanding of the macroeconomic, the political, legal situation, etc. But also critical for us is to understand the automotive value chain. It's important to us to understand the flow of new and used vehicles in the market, where the volumes are, who the suppliers are, and ultimately who the end customers are for those vehicles. This helps us understand what the right market entry strategy is with the right products and services. The pace of adoption of digital technology varies considerably between markets. In markets where there are already wholesale physical car auctions, that pace of change has been much slower because people were quite happy with the status quo. However, in markets where there was a less formal exchange process, acceptance of digital and the pace of change has been much more rapid. Particularly here, I would evidence markets such as continental Europe, where because vehicles particularly move across borders, having an online wholesale marketplace has been absolutely key for all customers. And from that perspective, our customer is the buyer and the seller. There are also other markets where effectively they haven't had to go through the physical stage. So very quickly, they've no need to have a physical car auction, they've shifted straight to digital. There are a number of factors behind the pace of acceptance of digital technology. In markets such as continental Europe, acceptance has been very quick because the digitization of the transaction process has really helped vehicles cross borders. In markets such as Australia, the acceptance of digital technology has been quite slow because there's a lot of contentment with the existing process of physical car auctions. However, in other markets where distance is an issue, digital technology has enabled people to acquire vehicles from more distant places that through purely physical means they wouldn't have been able to do. The technology itself can be a barrier, and in a market where we're dealing with buyers and sellers, the rate of acceptance of new technology amongst buyers is the critical factor here. It's also not true to say that the more mature the market, the quicker the rate of acceptance of that technology will be. What we've seen in some of the immature markets is a race to digital fairly quickly. There is no need to go through that traditional step of where you have a physical car auction as an interim step towards full digital. Our digital solutions do vary by market. Within the UK, we have a strong physical infrastructure as well in terms of the ability to move, inspect, clean vehicles and so on and so forth. Whereas other markets such as continental Europe, we rely on local partners to do those activities. The needs of the markets are very different. So within Europe, where essentially vehicles cross borders quite easily, we make sure that we've got a platform which is capable of doing international sales. Within the UK, there is very little international sales. The only vehicles that move from this right-hand drive market move across to Ireland or places such as Australia and New Zealand. And it's a very small part of our business. So within our Mannheim business, it's taken 15 years for the majority of transactions to move from a physical to a digital environment. But the automotive industry itself is undergoing some radical changes. And there's 6 trends that I would pick out at the moment. Electric vehicles are starting to go mainstream. We're also starting to see the development of vehicle autonomy, where we've moved from a feet-off environment to ultimately now a hands-off environment. And finally, we're going to get to a point where your brain can switch off completely. Here, however, it's probably human acceptance that is the barrier to ultimate change rather than the technology itself. In terms of the way people own and operate cars, we've seen the emergence of mobility. This takes the form of things like subscription models for more flexible motoring, but also we've seen the growth of things like ride-hailing, such as Uber, and things like car sharing. The governments are playing a much more aggressive role in terms of trying to influence change. The climate change agenda is clearly very important here, but the introduction of things like emission zones, barriers to using city centres such as cost of parking and so on and so forth, but they try and nudge change. In certain markets, the company car will become taxed out of existence, and for many large leasing companies and suppliers to that market, they've got to think about changing their business model as their orientation is more towards the consumer as their end user rather than a traditional fleet manager. The way cars are sold is going to undergo radical change, with the manufacturers seeking to take more control of the dealership model. But also what we're starting to see is things like online retailing emerging. We're also starting to see consolidation of the manufacturers. PSA a couple of years ago acquired General Motors Europe, and we're also seeing talks now between PSA and FCA in terms of a merger. We're also seeing new entrants in the market such as Tesla, Polestar and Rivian. These new entrants are challenging the way the current ecosystem works. Tesla, headed by Elon Musk, is probably the most high profile of the new entrants, has highly innovative products, electric-only products, and also in terms of its distribution model, it's chosen an online-only approach. It's redefined its supply chain for what it sees as a very different world, and that's enabled it to grow very successfully and very rapidly across the globe. It does use stores, but these stores are often actually to help introduce the product to people. Often these are located in city centres rather than the traditional large dealership which sits outside of town. Electric vehicles by their very nature don't need the same level of service and maintenance that traditional internal combustion engine cars do. And ultimately, as a consumer, what you appreciate is the fact that the vehicle can be taken away and serviced at a location which could be some distance away, but to you as a consumer, you're left with full mobility during that time. Our world is changing. We can't preserve the model which has operated very successfully for over 50 years. It's not just about digitization of the ecosystem, it's about understanding how digital affects all the other aspects of your business. So from our perspective, we're redefining our business model to make sure that we continue to develop our physical auction capability alongside a redefined ecosystem, which means that our physical services are far more important than perhaps we thought in the past. We can't change and influence the future, but we can seek to adapt to it and make sure that our business model is one that evolves to meet future customer needs. The needs of our customers are changing, and we need to make sure that we move with it.